let's move to power forwards, Ethan. Now, this is, I think, where the interesting questions begin. And of course, the questions that everybody wants to start with. And that's a conversation regarding Victor Wembanyama, Ethan. We're 30 minutes in and we haven't even really mentioned him. How about that?
Mhm.
But
Record.
I think after the summer league, and you can tell me your thoughts on this, Ethan, but I just feel like he's not going to play the five.
No, definitely not. I think you need a not a big guy because Zach Collins is obviously not like a thick center, but pause. You need somebody at that center spot to take some of the abuse and physicality away from him. And his skill set, I underestimated how close it really was to Kevin Durant or old school Dirk Nowitzki as far as where they like the ball, how they want to take guys off the dribble, and where they want to score from. Obviously, he still has post up capabilities, and we saw that. We saw footwork, but at the same time, it's not something that he is his strength yet, especially when he's going up against NBA grown men level defenders. So let's move him to the four, let his skill set shine, and protect his body because it is still a skinny frame,
Yep.
even though he has put on some strength. Let's give him some time and let him not get injured.
Yeah, I completely agree. I realized when I was editing our last clip, also shout out to y'all on the campaign clip that got up to 1,000 views. Want to say appreciate you guys. I realized when I was editing it and, uploading it, that I said during it, I misspoke and I said my confidence has only gone up that Wemby will not play the four when I meant to say the five. It was just a, jumble in my head there, misspoke. But that's like a key thing because that's the one thing if I had a summer league takeaway that kind of going into it, we were kind of tooting the horn for that. As much as we were talking about how we've kind of backed off of the Jeremy starting at point guard and our confidence has decreased in that. On the flip side, whenever we were talking about that, we were always talking about, Wembanyama playing the four in that scenario. And that is something where my confidence has only increased with what we saw in summer league. So I'm just really hoping he plays there. I'm pretty sure he's going to.
Yep.
The only other crazy thing that I think could maybe happen is like if Pop just was like, put him at the three,
He
like
could.
which the thing is he could, yeah. So that's I'm not gonna just because of the height and the wingspan. It just seems like the four is so is like the obvious. That's why we're talking about him in this vein. But that is something that you can at least like I talked about the 5% potentially happening earlier. That's something that also I feel like it's actually like a realistic possibility with where he's at right now physically. But just to harp on that a little bit, we did that whole video way back in the day, Ethan. I say way back in the day, way back in the summer, talking about how many games Wembanyama will play this season. And one of the things that we talked about in that video was how in the stories that we've read, it was like he'd never lifted a weight in his life. That there were like stories about that, obviously. And he did the interview where he said people need to skinny up. There have been videos of him coming out of him lifting weights now in an NBA strength program. I don't think that that's, and some people might be like, oh, well, that's a change of tone. I don't think he's extreme lifting. I
Mhm.
think that there's probably just a combination. Well, one, he might have felt a little bit of summer league. I think they were probably planning on doing that regardless of how summer league went, actually.
Agreed.
But still, I think that there was definitely probably some conversations between his trainer, who is now on the Spurs payroll, and the Spurs, medical training staff that had a plan for him. And I'm sure it was completely collaborated, everything that they're doing. I'm sure it's just the collaboration of all this knowledge that his trainer has on him. And then, of course, all of the knowledge that the Spurs have with their history managing Timmy. I was about to say Kawhi, but like that's obviously a different scenario. But still, like that is like it. There's a lot of injury stuff that the Spurs have had to deal with during their time, on top of their knowledge of an NBA strength program as well. So I think when you mesh those two factors together, that's why you're getting a little bit of weight lifting from Wemby, and I'm sure there's a lot more other stuff that will not drastically cause him to put on weight, but will also help him with the physical, with adjusting to the physicality of the NBA.
1000%. And it helps that Jeremy Sohan might be his backup. Because if things go haywire or he's suddenly being pushed around too much, insert Jeremy and Zach, and they're gonna take care of that.
Yeah. And that might be another reason why Jeremy might be the candidate to be off the bench first too, because this is Wembanyama's first NBA season. If the Spurs only think that he's going to play 50, 60 games, or somewhere in that kind of realm, they're like, okay, well, Jeremy's going to be starting like all the games he's not playing anyway.
Mhm.
So the more we're talking about that, it kind of seems like Jeremy coming off the bench might be the most likely thing. I don't know if that's going to be the long term. I don't think that that's going to be the case. Say Wemby really adjusts physically, maybe that ends up being the front court moving forward. But another thing that I do want to touch on just before we get more into the power forwards, Ethan, is I think that there's one other lineup that we haven't talked about that I think could be a potential. And I don't think that this is going to happen, but if there was going to be a scenario where all those guys played in the starting lineup, maybe it's Devin. Devin showed a lot of ball handle at the point guard specifically.
Mhm.
Devin showed a lot of ball handling last season on top of his own shot creation. And I mean, he just has the ball in his hands and is dribbling more. You know what I'm saying? So you could put the ball. I believe he's someone who could take the ball up the court. If you wanted to do a Devin, Keldon, Sochan, Wembanyama, and Zach lineup. Now, to be honest with you, I don't really. The more I'm talking about, I don't think that would ever start. But maybe there is a chance that you see that throughout the season if Devin's ball handling and his playmaking continues to develop. Because
Mhm.
with what I saw from his ball handling last season, that gives me some confidence to believe that Devin could have a little bit more playmaking ability that hasn't been unearthed, or at least we didn't get to see last year, in his limited sample size.
It's not impossible, and I'll continue to harp on this. There is no guaranteed lineup or
Right,
rotation until the season starts. Like we could see some crazy stuff where suddenly Reggie Bullock, Chetty Osman, and Campaign are all have significant roles, and we don't
right,
see an iota of Blake Wesley or Julian Champagny or Mamu or whoever it might
right.
be. Or suddenly Blake Wesley might be the sixth man. He's the first guy coming in off the bench. Like who knows what's going to happen? I don't think anyone does except for Pop, and he might not even know until preseason rolls around.
Right. Yeah. And that's why, and I'm so glad that you said that, Ethan, because that's why I'm bringing up all these
Mhm.
potential different lineups because of the uncertainty with the Wembanyama factor. So that's just another one that popped into my brain that could potentially happen. And I think if you guys have been listening to us 37 minutes into this so far, you're starting to see that there's a lot of different options because of the versatility that the Spurs have on their roster.
Mhm.
And that makes a lot of time for evaluation, like you said, and that makes a lot of tough decisions as well. But it's also a good thing for the Spurs because they can see all these, potential rotations in training camp, and
Yes.
and experiment with them also in preseason, um, and just figure out what's best for the team. So it's a good problem to have. But going back to Jeremy Sohan, we've already talked about him a little bit. Uh, I really don't have too much more to say about Jeremy other than just reiterating the fact that he does so many different things on the court. It feels like he can almost guard 1 through 5, depending on the team that we're playing, and the certain matchups. But at least 2 through 4. He has playmaking, his shooting. We saw what it was at the beginning of the season and where it was at the end of the season, to me gave me a lot of confidence that that can continue to improve. And the scoring at all 3 levels can improve. Really, last season it was more at the mid range and in the paint. But then on top of that, his playmaking, as well as being able to play out of the post, take people off the dribble, bring the ball up the floor, or go, post up on the block. He can just do so many different things that we've mentioned, so many times in so many different videos. So, we talked about how the shooting guard position is the most set. If there's one that has another argument, and really, if there's a position that has the most talent on the team, it's
Mm.
probably this one.
And we haven't even mentioned Chetty Osman.
Oh, why are you mentioning him before you know who?
uh,
Don't.
Mamu?
Okay, that
Chet-
I'll give you Mamu Barlow. What are you talking about?
oh, Don Barlow. Yes, you're right. I forgot all about Mr. Barlow, the summer
Mister,
league
they
MVP.
literally, I know.
You're not wrong about that. You're not
No,
wrong.
we actually have. I'm glad we brought this up. For all that jokes aside, there, we have a lot of power forwards now. Obviously, Dom will be on a two-way. But
Mhm.
you mentioned Mamu, and then who was the other person you were mentioning
Chetty
before?
Osman, who can play
Yeah,
technically 3 or
right,
4.
right. Absolutely, he's 6'7".
Mhm.
Ken Birch,
Ken Birch can play 5 or 4
Ken
technically.
Birch still on the roster, baby.
Oh, man.
Yo,
Oldest guy too, I think.
isn't that
Oh, no, he's 1 year younger than Reggie Bullock, who's our
Ken
oldest.
Birch made it longer than Lamar Stevens, man.
Rip. Maybe
And
he's just a dog, bro. Maybe he's
dude,
gonna
if
come the next season and play.
we're saying this, Kem's starting. We've been making fun of him for a whole year. The lineup
Oh,
is Trey, Devin, Keldon, Wembanyama, Birch. Oh my
Birch.
god. Poor,
Birch,
it was
please.
all cap. Pop was just lying just to hide.
Oh,
He was lying about Zach to hide our secret
yep.
Canadian weapon.
I kinda
Um,
hope he plays just so we can say "Birch, please" a lot more.
no,
"Birch,
that would be good.
please,"
That would be good. That would be
every
good, man.
time.
Okay. Centers. Now that the actual position that Ken Birch would play,
Mm,
Zach Collins and Charles Bassey. Not too much to say here either, Ethan, because our last video was exclusively talking about both of them. I'm excited to see Zach continue to get better in the areas he got better in last year. You know, as a passer, as a defender, and as a shooter in the mid range as well as the 3-point line. Um,
mhm.
and all the things that Pop said about him as why he's the 5 of the future for the Spurs. And then when it comes to Charles, I'm just excited to see him get back on the court. And really, I'm excited. I want to see him with Wemby. I want to see him bang down low with whoever, whatever big guy we're having to play. Like if we're playing Nurkic, you know what I'm saying? Or we're
Yeah,
playing Embiid. Like I want to see him do all of the work there. And then just Wembanyama just, on the perimeter, just doing whatever, taking what the defense gives him. But I want to see Charles help Victor.
mm. You know what I think is gonna happen a lot, actually, when you said that? I could totally see Charles Bassey and Zach Collins putting in 99% of the work to slow those big guys down. And then right as the big guy finally goes up to like with a layup or a hook shot, Wemby just swats it out of the air, and everyone's like, "Defensive player of the year, Victor
or,
Wembanyama."
or it's or it's like a rebound, and they're
Yeah.
like battling for position with their life with Zach or Charles,
Yep.
and then it's just 8-foot wingspan grab
Grabs like a
with
tennis
with it,
ball.
yeah, and he's got like Trey Murphy guarding him or something,
Yep.
and shout out to Trey Murphy. Trey Murphy's just 6 inches shorter than him.
Yep.
Like Trey
Yep.
Murphy's a good defender. That's just he was just a 4 that came to mind.
Yeah, that's a good
Um,
one.
so yeah, I'm excited for both of those guys, just to see them next to Wembanyama. Zach as well. If Zach's 3-point shooting can continue, man, you could have a twin tower sniper
You
combo.
could.
Instead of like David and Timmy, which was all in the post, you could have Zach and Wemby, shooting the lights out. That's ideally. I just imagine in my head. I just have dreams, and it's just Zach and Zach and Wemby, and it's just like lasers every time
Mm.
they shoot a three, and it just goes right through the basket. It's just throughout the season. You know,
One can only pray and hope, Jude. I hope that comes true. And
I hope so too.
I don't have anything to add about the centers. I think you hit the nail right on the head with both of those guys at the starting and backup center. But I do want to take a poll here. What's the over under
Okay.
on how many fights Zach doesn't start but finishes because somebody decided to pick on Victor Wembanyama?
Ooh, that's a good question. Y'all tell us in the comments below what you think.
I'm going with 5. I'm gonna go with 5.
I'll go with 3. Wait.
Okay,
No,
at
no, no.
least 5.
4. 4.
4. Ooh, you're gonna do that to me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. You're right
Okay.
in between.
All right. I'm thinking 5.
Okay.
And I'm not talking just like a little and like
No,
say
it's
something. I'm
like they
talking
did
like they
something to
stop play.
Wemby.
They stop
Yeah.
play. There's whistles blowing. That's what I'm talking about.
Interesting. Does it have to be exclusively Zach?
Yes. Because I think if you want to add Jeremy in there, I'm gonna bump that up to like 8.
Okay, I'm just gonna roll with 4. I'm gonna stick with 4. I'm gonna stick
5
where
for
I'm at.
Zach.